Awesome. So we're Team Rickshundred. Yeah, that story is coming. But before we begin, there is actually Harrison missing today. We're a team of 7. He's done his fair share, so we can't blame him. But he's unfortunately not here today. So we'll start with a quick demo. We've got some very similar features to other teams, so we'll put emphasis on what we've done differently, and the rest of it. After that, we'll get into our big learnings and takeaways from the year.
So, like Sam said, I've gone to the wrong page. We'll just very quickly go over the main features that we have. So, I'm logged in as an admin user right now, and this is our main project page, where you can see an overview of all the sprints, events, deadlines, and milestones. One thing we're particularly proud of is live updates. So as you can see there, Steve Stevenson, another teacher, has started editing an event. And if you were to save that event, it would update automatically without the need to refresh for all users. We also have calendars and groups, which are very similar to the other teams, so I'll skip over those. The main crux of our application is our evidence page. So from here, users can create pieces of evidence in support of their learning that they've done throughout the project. So if I create a piece of evidence, you see I can add a title, a description, and set the date. I can also add or create skills that are associated to the piece of evidence and select the categories that it falls under. You can also add external web links for any pages that support this piece of evidence, as well as link other users. So when I link a user and I create this piece of evidence, then that piece of evidence will automatically be created for them as well. And you may notice that some of our skills here are slightly different colors. And this is a feature that is unique to our team, where the more piece of evidence that a skill is associated to, the lighter it becomes. And we did this because we thought it was a good way for users to very quickly see an overview of the skills that they use most often and which skills they might need to have more practice in. Yep, so that is a very quick overview of our application.
It's fair to say that the application you just saw is not what the project has always looked like. At the start of the year, we came into the project all excited to make a new app, but the first diagram we were faced with looked something like this, where Matthew introduced the course with the initial skeleton, while we just kind of sat there nodding our heads and pretending that we understood. And it took us actually about a week just to get our heads around this enough to even get started. And after 3 weeks of Sprint 1, this was our first page that we had, and sadly we were actually chuffed with this. All you could really do was log in, change your details as a user, register, but clearly we hadn't actually been introduced to styling yet, and we had some other bugs like the profile picture, which you couldn't even change, was pushed out the side of the screen, so you actually had to scroll across just to do anything on the app. That was pretty high quality app that was, but the reason I bring this up is because just looking at our initial first product and reflecting on this really puts into perspective how much we've grown over the course of this year. This looks slightly different to the demo you just saw, so we're pretty proud of that.
So one of the first major technical hurdles we encountered this year was trying to link users and their activities together. None of us had any experience with that before, and so we initially tried to implement live updating on our own strength. But we quite quickly found that we just didn't have the skills for it, and so we tried implementing it using libraries, which let us use functionality that other people have already created. Our first choice, we spent an entire sprint implementing it with one library, only to work out that it didn't really meet our needs. So at the end of that sprint, we decided that we would start from scratch and go again with a different library. Taking a step back from it and realising that we'd made a wrong decision and that we needed to start again from scratch was a really important step in our learning journey, as it showed us that we just don't always make the right decisions at the start, and it's really important to know when to correct those. Our calendars were a similar story for us, where initially we implemented a calendar without a library, and while it was fine for the first story, when we wanted to build on it later in the project, we just didn't have the skills to add things like sprint editing. So to combat that, we added a library, much like the other teams did, and we found that really, really useful. Unfortunately, we got a little bit overconfident with the libraries, and we started using them to solve pretty much any difficult problem that we encountered. Eventually, we realised that because we were implementing so many libraries, and often they didn't perfectly meet our needs, we kept having to rewrite their functionality anyway, and so our code base was becoming more complex and harder for us to understand. So we became much more careful with the libraries that we implemented, which was also really good for our technical growth because we had to look for clean solutions to the problems we were encountering instead of just looking for libraries that could meet our needs.
At this point in the project, our UI started looking like this, which is a marginal improvement from the first version. At this point, we had gained some experience with coding on the front end, so now we not only had tricks behind the curtain, but in front of it as well. We could populate someone's personal details with all their information to make it easy to edit, for instance. This also marked a change in philosophy as well. We started thinking not only about the code and the functionality, but about the user, about who was using the application and why. We thought about making it easier for them to use it and about helping them do that. And that shift in philosophy, about thinking about more than just the code, brings us over to the team policies. At the beginning of the project, we had a definition of done, we had a yellow card policy, the works, but we didn't implement them, we didn't enforce them at all. We had these systems in place, but we didn't feel comfortable calling each other out effectively to say that we've actually done wrong. So no one got a yellow card. That was until very late in the project, where we realized we actually have to follow these policies that we put. So we started yellow carding people, we started following our policies, and we learned that that's the whole reason you have them, is so that way you can know where you're at and know the direction that everyone is going. And then these policies tell you when someone has veered off course, and you need to inform people of that, otherwise they can't get themselves back. Sometimes, though, you get knocked off course. Security concerns. So this requires a bit of a story. It's a Friday afternoon like any other. I receive a message on Slack saying, hey, check out the evidence page. So I fire up the virtual machine and I have a look. And this is what greets us. Internet sensation, classical prank, Rick Astley's Never Going to Give You Up, auto-playing on our evidence page. What had happened is that a member of the teaching team, 3 days prior, had managed to sneak in some code through a security vulnerability we had to get this classic maneuver into their page. And for us, this was an important learning point actually for us, because this was funny as well. We laughed at ourselves being the butt of this joke, but it showed us that security is something that we have to take serious steps and test all along the way. Before this, we hadn't really experienced a security attack before. No application we wrote had been rickrolled. But now we, moving forward, made sure to guard against that. I myself religiously tested to see if it was even possible to rickroll in every part of our application. Please don't take that as a challenge during the interactive session, please. But we learned we learned about security. We learned about, before we knew of security, and now we know about security.
Code reviews are very important. And the first of the beginning, we just review the ARM branches, and our branches look like the first picture. For the reviewers, they are very hard to find the code they want to review. That is our feelings. And then we build up a branch for each of the tasks that make people easier to find the code they want to review. It's like the second picture. But the problem is when we want to see the code being changed, the history even contains the code already being removed. So it's okay, but still feel a little confused. Then we improved again. We use merge request. We create merge request for each of the tasks. That makes review very easier and it's very clear. But the problem is when people want to review a task, they open the merge request, and they also have to open another page about the task details to see the requirement of the task. So we improved, and the last sprint, we make a merge request format that contains not only the task details, but also the checklist that are very helpful, make our review quality much better. The second thing about the quality control is testing. At the beginning of the project, we didn't pay much attention about the testing. We have no idea to do testing just like a unit test. And also we know the testing was important, but actually it is much more important than we thought. So during the project, we discovered our shortcoming in testing. Therefore, we learned more test modules. When we fail in a feature, we think about why this feature failed, but we thought this feature should be passed, but it's failed. So we have to find out which testing being added to stop this happen again. And we're talking with the teaching teams, and we learn from other groups. We got a lot of testing tools that make our testing web much rich, and it works very well. So in the end of the project, we feel much more confident about our project because it very good at catch up the bugs, and all of us become better spiders.
Speaking of bugs, technical debt is something that we've struggled with throughout the whole project. So technical debt, for those who don't know, is when you make decisions that make it easier to finish the task that you're currently working on, but make it harder to extend that later on in the project. Taking shortcuts to get the job done. In our code base, this was partially as a result of laziness, but mostly because of our lack of technical knowledge and practice working on the code base. At the start, we were new and inexperienced, so the result was poorly optimized code, and it made the future changes difficult. For example, our code that we wrote early on to validate user input, we have to validate it in several different places, and we just rewrote the validation code in different places. Later on in the project, when we had to change the way validation works, it was a big job to go through and in every place change it to work differently. A better solution that we later developed was to do the validation centrally so that we can check it and then that passes through the entire application. And this makes it more efficient to change in the future if we need to do that. As we've progressed in this project, we've become better at recognizing and preventing technical debt. And we've also been working on fixing our earlier mistakes as we return to parts of the project, so rewriting as we go. Though we're far from perfect now, our ability to recognize technical debt is a sign of how much we've improved over the course of the project. It's easy to regret the mistakes we've made, but it's important to focus on the growth that we've also made over the course of the project. So to sum it all up, this is our final design. We put a lot of effort into making it look visually pleasing and considered the experience that we want users to have when they use it. But most importantly, we carried over the best bits from the designs that we had along the way. And that's something I think, well, I hope that we can also do out of CNS302. Take all of the learnings that we've gathered over the course of this project and move them forwards into the things we do in the future. Thank you.